Close your eyes now and let the day slip away. There's no rush anymore, no chores left to finish, no sounds but your breath. Soft and steady, let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders lower. You are safe now. There's nothing to do but listen. Let the world of now drift back. Back beyond clocks, beyond cities, beyond electricity, until all that's left is a flicker of candlelight, a heavy oak door, and a cold stone wall waiting to breathe with warmth. Breathe in, slowly feel the quiet settle behind your eyes, and as you exhale, picture the world of another time. Our story tonight begins in a castle chamber. The year is 1361. The sun has already set behind the stone towers of the keep, and in the east-facing room, prepared for a young bride, the fire is glowing softly in the hearth. The walls are thick with tapestries, reds, browns, dark greens, all stitched with animals and saints, their eyes wide in the flickering half-light. The bed is the centerpiece, grand and high, with wool-stuffed mattresses and a canopy of faded velvet. Everything smells faintly of candle wax, damp stone, crushed lavender, and something sharper goose grease, perhaps used to smooth the bride's hair earlier that day. She is 14. She sits on a carved wooden bench near the foot of the bed, her hands resting in her lap, fingers laced tightly together. Her dress is stiff with embroidery silver thread, woven through dark blue linen, too heavy for comfort. She's been told not to wrinkle it. She's been told many things. Tonight is her wedding night. The ceremony was long but dull. Latin words spoken above her head. A golden ring slid onto her finger. Her new husband, a man nearly twice her age, kissed her cheek before leading her down the aisle. She smiled when told. She bowed when expected. She barely spoke. The feast was louder, meat, wine, music, dancers in the hall, but none of it quite touched her. The noise felt far away, like a river rushing past the walls. She picked at honeyed almonds. She listened to older women whisper. She watched her new husband laugh with the steward, his wine cup always half full. Now, hours later, she is here, alone, or nearly alone. A servant girl stands in the corner, eyes lowered, hands clasped in front of her apron. Two elder women from the household come and go quietly, preparing the room, adjusting the fire, smoothing the sheets, placing dried rosemary on the bed frame to ward off sickness and sorcery. Everything is ritual. Nothing is explained. The bride has been taught that obedience is virtue, that a woman's duty is to her house, her land, and her womb. Her mother told her that love may come later or not at all, that a woman must be still and good and grateful, and most of all, silent. She takes another breath. The door opens. Voices murmur in the hallway, low and unreadable. There's the sound of boots against stone, a brief cough, and then the man. He enters the chamber slowly, dressed now in a long shirt and hose. He is not cruel in appearance, just older, weathered, perhaps nervous too. His eyes flick across the room, then land on her. He nods, not a smile, just a nod. Behind him, two men remain at the threshold. They will not come in, but they will not go far either. And some noble households. The wedding night is confirmed by witnesses, noblemen, or church-appointed lords, who must later report that the marriage was consummated. In others, a bloodied sheet is produced by mourning and displayed with pride. Tonight it is unclear which tradition will be followed, But the bride knows that privacy in this room is not guaranteed. Her husband speaks softly. Perhaps he asks if she is well. Perhaps he compliments her hair. His voice is not unkind. But she does not meet his eyes. She rises when prompted, as she was taught. The servant girl steps forward to help her undress. First the veil, then the girdle, then the heavy gown, peeled back layer by layer. She is left in her shift, pale linen against pale skin. She shivers not from cold, but from uncertainty. Her heart is not loud, but it is fast. She looks toward the fire and not the bed. Her husband removes his own tunic slowly. There is a ritualistic weight to each motion, as though neither of them quite believe what they're doing is meant to be tender. It is, rather, duty, confirmation, continuation of family lines and land holdings. And yet, beneath the surface, there is more: fear, curiosity, sorrow, a question no one will answer. She is told that this is normal, that this is right, that women have always entered marriage this way, but in the hush of that firelit room, it feels like standing at the edge of a lake in winter, ready to step in, not knowing how deep the water goes. He reaches for her hand, not roughly, not impatiently, just gently, and together they move toward the bed, not with romance, not with joy, but with the quiet knowledge that this too is part of her story now. The wool mattress sinks slightly beneath their weight. The bed creaks long and low, like a ship moored to a wooden dock. The canopy above them, deep red and thick with dust, catches shadows cast by the flickering firelight. Outside the window, wind breathes against shuttered glass, carrying the faint cries of owls and the last footfalls of those returning to the great hall below. She lies still, her body stiff with unfamiliarity, with ritual, with the heaviness of things she cannot say. The linen of her shift clings lightly to her back, and beneath it, her skin burns not from heat, but from awareness. Every inch feels noticed, exposed, not by touch, but by what might come. He does not speak much. Only a few short sentences, gentle, low-voiced, not mocking, not cruel, just formal. Like he, too, is playing a part already written. Like he, too, has learned what must happen tonight from older men and whispered instruction. There is no ceremony to it, no embrace. Just slow movements, tentative glances, and the occasional pause to listen to her breathing, to the fire, to the creak of the bed frame as he shifts his weight again. He asks, perhaps, if she is all right. She nods. She has not cried. She has not resisted. But neither has she reached for him. Her hands remain by her sides, her eyes fixed on a spot on the canopy above. She imagines it is a tent, a traveling pavilion, a place not meant to stay, that perhaps this room, this bed, this moment is a passage, not a destination. He touches her arm. It is not unkind. There is warmth in his hand, a little tremble even, and for the first time she feels something unexpected. Sympathy. For him, for herself, for every woman who has lain in a bed like this before, for every man who has tried to cross the strange, fragile bridge between expectation and connection. The fire crackles. The wind hums through cracks in the shutters. Time does not rush. There is no suddenness, no violent act. Only a slow, awkward unfolding of what is expected. She closes her eyes as he leans forward, his face close now, his breath warm on her cheek. Their bodies, joined not by desire but by tradition, move with a kind of solemn rhythm like a prayer spoken aloud without knowing the words. It is not over quickly, but neither does it linger, and when it ends there is no applause, no announcement, just silence again. He lies beside her now, one arm across his chest, breathing slowly. The fire has dimmed to coals. The scent of rosemary still clings faintly to the bedposts. A servant may come later to take the linens to look for proof. Or perhaps not. Perhaps in this household, discretion is favored over pride. She turns on her side, away from him, not in rejection, just in search of stillness. She doesn't feel changed. Not yet. Not completely. But something has begun. A new rhythm. A new name. A new shape to her future. He speaks quietly once more. A word of thanks? A wish for rest? She cannot remember. Her mind is already softening at the edges, drowsy with the long day, the wine from the feast, the hush of the hour. She pulls the wool blanket higher. The bed is warm now. Her body aches a little, unfamiliar with closeness. But the pain is dull, almost already fading. Outside the castle quiets. Footsteps become fewer. Doors latch. Braziers glow on empty battlements. Somewhere a dog barks once, then is silent. She sleeps. Not deeply, but enough. And beneath the velvet canopy, in the high, heavy bed of a stranger-turned husband, a girl becomes a wife, not by love, not by choice, but by ritual written in ink and blood and bread. Tomorrow she will rise early. She will dress in finer clothes. She will be called Lady by servants who never looked at her twice before. She will walk through the great hall on her husband's arm and be shown her place at the table. And no one will speak of the night. No one will ask if she was afraid, or if she was ready, or if she closed her eyes and imagined herself walking through fields instead of lying beneath oak beams in expectation. Because this is how it has always been, but still, somewhere inside her, a tiny ember burns, not rebellion, not rage, but memory, and that will stay with her, long after the linens are washed, long after the candle melts into the stone basin, long after the watching eyes turn away. She will remember the weight of the bed, the scent of rosemary, the moment the wind passed through the shutter cracks and reminded her she was still breathing. The fire is low in the hearth. Just a few glowing embers remain, pulsing like slow heartbeats in the dark. When her eyes open, the light has changed. It's not the warmth of sunrise, but the cold gray wash of dawn before the sky decides what it wants to be. Her limbs feel heavier than usual, and for a moment she isn't sure where she is. The room is so still, too still. Then a creak of movement beside her. The presence returns. The memory settles. She is not in her maiden's room anymore. She is not a daughter today. She is a wife. The title tastes dry in her mouth, like stale bread. Her husband has already risen. She hears him adjusting his hose, tugging at a belt buckle, clearing his throat into a linen cloth. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His movements are not hurried, but practiced. She guesses this is not his first time in a chamber like this. Still, he is not unkind. He leaves her alone, gives her space, lets the door close gently behind him. And once again, she is not sure whether to be relieved or resentful. The room feels emptier without him, though last night she had longed for the silence to return. Her body aches, but not sharply. There is a tenderness between her legs, a warmth in her lower back, and something else, the vague flutter of not knowing whether this night has changed everything or nothing. She reaches slowly beneath the blanket and touches the linen sheet. There is no blood. She stares at her hand, not sure what to feel. Pride? Disappointment? Fear? Because in this world, blood was more than biology. It was evidence. Proof of purity. Proof of obedience. Proof of worth. Some families required the sheets to be presented, displayed before elders. Others simply whispered about what had or hadn't happened. In noble houses, these secrets held political weight. A girl who did not bleed might be questioned, her story doubted, her honor shadowed. She lies still and listens. The hallway beyond the heavy door is quiet. The scent of smoke lingers in her hair, and the sheets are warm where her body has pressed against them. A draft lifts the edge of the canopy above her, making it flutter like a ship's sail. She is adrift now, in a new life, in a new skin. A knock at the door, not loud, just two soft taps. It's the same servant girl from last night. She enters with her eyes lowered, carrying a basin of warm water and a bundle of fresh linens. She doesn't speak, just curtsies and begins to tend to the chamber. She adds wood to the hearth, pulls open one shutter to let in the light, smooths out the wrinkles in the blanket. When she reaches for the bloodless sheet, her hand pauses. A single second of silence, then she takes it anyway, folds it neatly. No questions asked. Her expression does not change. That, too, is a kind of mercy. The bride rises slowly from the bed. Her shift hangs loosely now, slightly wrinkled. Her knees are stiff. She moves toward the basin, and the servant holds out a cloth. The water is warm, blessedly so. She presses it to her face, her throat, her arms. Then, more tentatively, to the rest of her. It is not shame she feels. Not quite. But something more like uncertainty. Like walking into a church you've never entered before. Unsure of how to kneel. Unsure if you're welcome. The girl helps her into a fresh gown. This one is lighter, made of soft linen, pale cream, with tiny buttons at the wrist. Her hair is braided, then wrapped around the crown of her head, and a pearl comb is placed at the back. The simplicity is purposeful. This is the morning after gown, designed to signal quiet dignity. She is to descend to the great hall as a wife now, not smiling, not radiant, just composed. There will be eyes on her. Even if no one says anything aloud, they will all be watching, looking for signs of fatigue, of limping, of awkward glances between husband and wife. She has been taught to offer none. She must move with care, with grace, as if last night had changed nothing at all. The servant finishes dressing her and quietly retreats, leaving the bride alone in the warm morning hush of the chamber. She stands by the window for a long while. Below, the courtyard is waking. Stable hands walk horses from the barn. Two boys carry baskets of bread from the ovens. A dog trots behind them, tail wagging. The world continues, unbothered, indifferent. She feels something stir in her chest. Not grief, not anger, but distance, like she is watching herself from across a wide field, unsure of how to call her own name. Back in 2020, I tested positive for COVID after a mild fever and sore throat. I lived alone in a small studio apartment just outside St. Louis. It wasn't anything serious, felt like a rough, cold butt. I followed the rules, quarantined, stayed inside. Let everyone I'd been around know. 3 days after my test, I got a call at 3:08 a.m. It woke me out of a dead sleep. The caller ID said unknown, but that's not unusual for some government health lines, so I answered. There was a pause. Then a voice said flatly, "Hello, I'm calling with the Missouri State Contact Tracing Division. Is this Daniel Warren?" It sounded off. Not robotic, not synthesized, but too calm, like someone reading from a script they'd memorized a little too well. "Yes," I said, still groggy. "Why are you calling at 3 in the morning?" "I apologize for the timing," he said. "We've been instructed to reach positive cases within 72 hours, regardless of time. May I confirm a few details?" He read off my name, address, phone number, and test date. All correct. He asked about symptoms, where I'd been standard stuff. Then he paused. "What time do you usually go to bed, Daniel?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" "For contact tracking purposes," he said. "We need to know your typical sleep hours. When do you fall asleep? When do you wake up?" "That doesn't make sense," I said. "What does that have to do with tracing?" There was a long pause. Then, "It helps us determine when you're most vulnerable." I laughed nervously. "I think you mean contagious?" He didn't respond. Just breathed slow and steady, like he was listening. I hung up. The next morning I called the actual state health department. They had no record of anyone calling me that night. They said their contact tracers only called between 8 and 6 p.m. and never from an unknown number. I figured maybe it was a scammer fishing for info. Still creepy, but I tried to forget about it. That night, I woke up again 3:08 a.m. on the dot. No phone call, but my apartment felt wrong. The air was still, like it was waiting for something. I got up and walked toward the door. That's when I saw it, my deadbolt. It was unlocked. I know I locked it. I always do. It's muscle memory. But there it was turned horizontal. I checked the windows. Nothing broken. No signs of forced entry. Still, I barely slept. I pushed a chair against the door and left all the lights on. The next night, same thing. Woke up at 3:08, a missed time, no call. But the chair was moved. Not far, just a few inches off alignment, like someone bumped it. And my phone had a new voicemail. No missed call. Just a voicemail. I played it. It was just breathing. Soft, deliberate. Then the voice whispered, "You sleep on the left side now." I hadn't told anyone that. Not even my ex. I used to sleep on the right, but with the fever and chills, I'd started sleeping closer to the radiator. I don't know how he knew. I called the police. They checked everything. No signs of tampering. No fingerprints. Nothing on the building's security footage. They said I was just stressed. Told me to rest. That night I slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow. I made it through 3:08 a.m. No noise. No movement. But the next morning, I found a note slid under my door. Plain white paper. Typed. All it said was, "Don't turn over when you hear the knock." There had been no knock. That night I didn't sleep. I sat up in bed, knife still under my pillow, staring at the door. 3:08 came. I held my breath. Nothing. Then knock, 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 not at the door. From under the bed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't turn over. When the sun came up, I checked. Nothing under the bed. Nothing on the floor. but the carpet was warm, like someone had just been lying there. I moved out that same week, changed numbers, bought a second lock. I still get nervous around 3 a.m. I haven't had another call. But last week I got a package, no return address. Inside was a phone. It rang once. 308. Days began to settle like dust. They come quietly, one after the next, until the rhythm of married life begins to take form, not because it is comfortable, but because repetition makes even unfamiliar things begin to seem natural. Breakfast at the same hour, walking the gardens, standing behind her husband during court petitions, smiling but not too much, listening, always. She is spoken of, not spoken to. At least not in ways that matter. Women comment on her dress, her posture, her embroidery work. Men nod politely and speak around her. Her husband includes her only when protocol requires it. He is courteous, distant, and predictable. He does not raise his voice, nor does he raise his eyes to hers more than once or twice a day. There is a peace in the lack of violence, but peace is not the same as happiness. When she walks the corridors, she hears the other girls whisper, "The new lady, so young, so quiet. Did you hear she didn't bleed?" She never turns when they say it. She never flinches. She has already decided what kind of woman she must appear to be. One who does not betray her thoughts. One who does not run. Because she has realized something about her role here. It is not about her body, or even her voice. It is about her ability to hold silence without letting it harden her. It is about watching. And so she watches. She watches how the older women speak when no men are nearby, softer, faster, sharper with wit. She listens to the maids mutter complaints under their breath as they wash linens. She memorizes the faces of those who pretend not to see her. And late at night, when the halls are quiet and the moon is bright outside her window, she writes. Not letters, not prayers, just little scraps of memory pressed into the cracks between pages in a book of psalms her mother gave her before the wedding. She tucks the notes between verses like petals, each one a small truth that belongs to no one but her, the way the fire snapped when he first touched my arm. How I did not cry. How I keep waking up before the bells. No one will read them. That is not their purpose. They are not rebellion. They are roots. She begins to learn the castle. Not just its rooms, but its rhythms. When the servants leave the kitchens. When the chapel is empty. Which stairs creak, and which walls are coldest after sundown. She comes to understand that every part of this place has a history beneath it, some loud, most forgotten. Just like women, and in learning the castle, she begins to learn herself. Her husband returns to her bed only occasionally. Their interactions are brief, wordless. There is no cruelty in him, but no closeness either. He is a lord raised by duty and land. She does not resent him, but she does not wait for him either. She waits instead for the small moments she's claimed for herself. A longer walk in the garden, a stolen hour by the fire with no embroidery in hand, a glance at the stars from her window before sleep takes her. They are not freedoms, but they are hers. The castle is a place of echoes. Every room holds the memory of footsteps, conversations, secrets. The walls breathe with time. The stones beneath her slippers have borne the weight of other women before her brides, widows, midwives, maids, and though none remain to speak, Their presence hums faintly through the corridors like wind through a keyhole. She begins to listen for them, not in a superstitious way, but in that quiet, reverent way of someone who has come to understand how much is left unsaid. When she walks alone through the upper gallery, where faded tapestries hang thick with dust, she often pauses, places her palm on the stone archway, and closes her eyes, just to feel something, just to imagine that someone else once did the same. At the back of the chapel, tucked into a cold alcove beneath a crumbling stained glass window, she discovers a small wooden chest. It's old centuries, maybe. No lock, just a warped lid. Inside, torn scraps of parchment, faded drawings, dried rose petals folded between them. She does not steal them. She does not tell anyone she found them. But she returns there, sometimes when she cannot sleep. She imagines the girl who hid them, maybe another bride, frightened, reaching for something soft in a life of stiff collars and cold expectations. Maybe she, too, wrote to herself, not to be heard, just to be real. Back in her chambers, her routine remains unbroken. She wakes before dawn, dresses with the help of her maid, sits at the window, and watches the sky turn violet, then gray. Her days are filled with stillness, receiving guests, walking the grounds, preparing letters she does not care to write. Her evenings are quiet, and the nights when he comes to her are wordless and brief. But it is not numbness she feels. It's something slower, deeper, like the sea beneath ice still alive, even when no one sees it move. In late winter, she hears news from the kitchens. Another noblewoman, a cousin of her husband, has died giving birth. The baby survived. The mother did not. There is mourning, of course, but it is brief, expected, replaced quickly by talk of lineage, heirs, titles. She listens, not to grieve, but to understand. She begins to read again religious texts, yes, but also poetry when she can find it. One dusty volume in the library contains verses from a traveling nun who wrote in the language of stars and longing. Another is full of herbal knowledge, with pressed sprigs between pages and notes on plants that calm the mind, soften pain, and encourage or prevent conception. She copies some of it down. In her song book, hidden behind the prayers, her body, too, she begins to understand. Its rhythms, its silences, its changes. She has not yet bled this month. She waits 3 days, 4, no sign. She does not tell her husband. She does not tell the maid. Not yet. She simply waits each morning, with both dread and awe watching. Her body becomes something that now holds more than just herself. She rests a hand on her stomach, flat and quiet, and wonders, what kind of mother will I be? Not the kind they will write about, but the kind who remembers. The wind changes. The snow begins to melt along the southern walls of the keep. Crows gather in the orchard, their black wings flashing between bare branches, and inside her something begins to root. She tells no one, not yet. She waits for the silence between her ribs to speak, for her breath to change, for her skin to feel less like armor and more like earth. There is no guide for this, not one meant for someone like her. She has no mother now, no sisters nearby. The women who surround her are either servants too careful with their words, or noblewomen who see children as part of inheritance, not as souls. But she feels it, not like a kick, not like a fire, just a shift, a softness. She wakes in the mornings with a strange new alertness, like her body is no longer hers alone, like it is listening inward. Her appetite changes. She feels hunger more sharply, then not at all. Her dreams become longer, stranger. She dreams of walking through forests barefoot, of birds nesting in her hands, of a voice she cannot place, whispering her name from behind closed chapel doors. And still she waits. She does not tell her husband, not because she fears him, but because she fears what the news will do to her. She will become something else. She will be watched, touched more, examined, measured, spoken of. And though it is her body that carries the mystery, the power of it will be taken from her the moment she speaks it aloud. So she savors the privacy, for now it is hers, this life inside her, this blooming, this fragile, unseen beginning. She begins to notice small things, how the light moves through the window in her chamber at dawn, how rosemary left on the firestones sweetens the air, how cold water now shocks her more deeply than before. The world feels more real, more full, as though her body is tuning her senses like an old instrument finally in key. And in that clarity she begins to prepare, not just her chamber, but her mind. She walks alone more often now, not far but far enough to feel herself breathe fully without the walls closing in. She walks the corridors where portraits of ancient women stare out from cracked wooden panels. Some are painted in red and gold. Some wear veils. Some carry infants in their arms. Others are alone, their faces unreadable. But she imagines what they might have said to her if their lips had not been sealed with paint. She imagines them whispering, "Be still. Be wise. You are not the first." The midwife arrives without fanfare. An older woman, dressed plainly, with eyes like soft stones. She is brought by the steward's wife, introduced as someone to assist the lady when the time comes. The midwife says little at first. She does not prod or press or examine. She only watches, observes, lets the lady speak in fragments. And finally, one night, in the hush of the firelight, the bride tells her, not with fear, not with drama, just the words, "I haven't bled in many weeks." The midwife nods and says nothing else, because in this world some truths do not need to be named louder than a whisper. Spring comes slowly to the stone halls. The wind no longer howls through the corridors at night, but sighs instead, like a voice grown tired of warning. The trees outside her chamber wear small green buds now, and the garden paths grow muddy beneath the weight of thaw. Life is returning, quietly, without permission. And so is she. By the time her belly rounds enough to press gently against the fold of her gown, the secret is no longer hers alone. Whispers pass between servants. The steward informs her husband. A letter is sent to her parents, manner-sealed with wax, brief and ceremonial. A child is expected. There are no questions, no soft words from her husband, only a nod at supper, the kind a man gives a worker when the harvest has begun on time. She is not disappointed. She did not expect joy. What she feels is harder to name, like a stone held in warm hands. Heavy, but not cruel. She finds herself sleeping more. Afternoons especially, in the sun-warmed corner of her chamber where the light rests softest. Her maid begins to hum as she works. The midwife visits more often. The fire burns lower now, even at night. Her body, once unfamiliar to her, has become something sacred, not worshipped, but watched, Every movement matters. Every ache is noted. Every shift in appetite discussed. Her body becomes public in the way noble women's bodies always do, owned by legacy, not self, but she learns to carry it with grace, not because she is forced to, but because she must survive it. She speaks more now. To the midwife mostly, she learns what herbs to avoid, what positions ease her aching back, what signs to fear, what dreams to welcome. They talk about birth like sailors talk about storms, not if, but when and how hard the winds will blow. She dreams often of water, wide rivers, shallow streams, rain sliding down stone walls. Sometimes the water is warm and still. Other times it rises to her chin, but she always floats, always breathes, always wakes. One day she returns to the old chapel alcove and places her hand on the wooden chest. Inside, the dried rose petals have shifted. A new mouse hole has appeared in the corner, and the parchment scraps have yellowed further. But she leaves a note of her own this time. Just one sentence. I carry something that will outlive me. She folds it small and tucks it beneath the softest petal. No one will know it's hers. That's what makes it matter. Her husband spends more time away, now overseeing the tenants, meeting with local lords, tending matters of land. She does not mind. She finds the hours longer but gentler without him. The space between her thoughts grows quieter. She can hear the birds again, the wind, her own heartbeat, steady under layers of wool and linen. At night she lies on her side and places both hands over the curve of her stomach. She whispers, not prayers, not names, but sounds, the way her mother used to hum before sleep. Little notes, shaped not by meaning but by comfort. And sometimes she thinks she feels a flutter, not a kick, just a brush of life like a moth inside her ribs. She does not know if it's a boy or a girl, but she knows already that it is hers before it is anyone else's, before it becomes heir, before it becomes pawn, before it belongs to the tapestries or the land. For now it is a name she holds in her mouth, unspoken, a seed, a song, a secret that is almost ready to bloom. The days are longer now. Sunlight lingers through the small, lidded panes of her chamber, well into evening, casting golden bars across the wooden floor, painting her shadow against the stone walls. Her body feels heavier with each passing day, her gait slower, the rhythm of her breath deeper. Everything has become more deliberate. She begins to hum to herself. Not songs she remembers from childhood, but soft, formless melodies. They rise without thought, often while she's resting in the chair by the window, or brushing her hair in the fading light. The maid notices, smiles, and says nothing. There is a reverence now, even in the quietest corners of the castle. People have begun to address her differently, not as the girl, not as my lord's young bride. Now she is Lady Mother-to-be. The title feels strange, like a garment too big for her shoulders, but she wears it all the same, because names like beds are grown into. Her hands no longer tremble. They move with the patient steadiness of someone who has lived through ritual and silence, and still managed to find softness on the other side. When she walks the garden paths, though slower, with more effort, she does not pause as often. Her steps, even careful, are her own. The midwife tells her to prepare, not in fear, but in rhythm. The baby will come when it chooses. The world will make room. She begins setting aside little things, linen cloths, a bundle of lavender, a carved wooden comb her mother once gave her, not because they are needed for birth, but because they matter, because when the pain begins and the walls close in, she will want to remember she was once a girl with a name and a voice. The women of the keep begin to gather closer, not overtly, but they find reasons to linger in her presence. The cook brings warm broth to her chamber without being asked. The steward's wife adjusts her pillows with motherly care. Even the maids speak more freely, now offering small stories, sweet gossip, laughter. One speaks of her own birth. Another speaks of a twin who did not survive. Another swears her child arrived feet first, and still sings like a nightingale. Their voices braid together around her like a soft nest. Not protection, not warning, but welcome. They understand this part of her life in ways the men never will, and she feels it warm and firm, like a hand resting gently against her spine. At night, her dreams change again. Now she walks through forests with a child in her arms, small, warm, faceless. The child hums back to her. In another dream, she kneels by a stream and washes little clothes in cold water, while doves nest in the branches overhead. In her waking hours, she whispers more, not to herself, not to the maid, but to the baby. Tiny murmurs, half-finished thoughts, soft, rhythmic phrases spoken against the roundness of her belly. She doesn't know if the child hears, but she believes the words settle in the water of her womb, floating like feathers. Sometimes when she breathes deeply, she feels her ribs stretch. The ache isn't painful, it's purposeful, like something sacred is making more space within her. A place for breath, a place for beginning, a place for love, before the world teaches the child to fear it. The night it begins, she wakes in the hour between bells, not to a sound, but to a feeling, a slow inward pull like the tide retreating just before the wave returns. Her breath catches, not from pain, not yet, but from the recognition that something ancient is unfolding inside her. She lies still for a moment, one hand on the crest of her belly, the other gripping the edge of the linen sheet. The fire in the hearth has burned low, and the room is wrapped in a dim orange glow. Outside, the courtyard is hushed. The moon is a pale coin above the garden wall, and the world, for just a breath, feels like it's holding itself still. Then it comes a cramp, deep and low, like the roots of a tree stretching. She closes her eyes and exhales slowly. This is it. She calls softly for her maid, not panicked, not loud, just enough. The girl enters with wide eyes, says nothing, and runs to fetch the midwife. Candles are lit, water is heated. Footsteps echo softly in the hall. The great house wakes, room by room, with the quiet efficiency of women who have done this before. No men come. They are not wanted here. This is a room for breath, for bone, for blood. The midwife arrives wrapped in a thick wool shawl. She asks few questions. Her eyes move quickly, her hands already at work, preparing cloth, oils, herbs. The chamber begins to smell of thyme and salt, of lavender and sweat. The sheets are loosened. A stool is placed nearby. The windows are cracked open just lightly to let the cold air steady the heat. She begins to pace. That's what she's told to do, to walk gently between contractions. Her maid supports her with both hands. Another servant offers broth, but she waves it off. The pain is not sharp yet, just tight, blooming in waves across her lower belly. like a hand wrapping slowly around her spine, and in between there is peace. Not comfort, exactly, but presence. She is here, fully. There is no room in her mind for yesterday or tomorrow. Only breath. Only now. And each time the pain returns, she closes her eyes and leans into it, not as a punishment, but as a passage. Her body knows this. Even if her mind is afraid, her bones remember. Her mother did this, her mother's mother too. Their names are not written in any book, but they are alive in this act, in this breath. In this cry, hours pass, maybe more. Time blurs. The fire is fed, the bedclothes are damp. Sweat curls at her temples. Her shift is loosened, and someone places a damp cloth against her neck. The midwife murmurs a prayer not Latin, but something older, something shaped by rhythm, not words. And then a deeper pain, sharper now, a wave that does not crest, but crashes. Her knees buckle. She leans forward. The midwife is beside her in a flash, guiding her to the stool. There is no time now for modesty, no place for fear. She cries out, not because she is afraid, but because the world is passing through her, because something is ending and something is beginning, and for one perfect moment they exist together in her body. Another push, a scream torn from her throat, and then the cry, not hers, not the midwife's, but the child's, thin, wet, furious, alive. The sound fills the chamber like incense, a high, gasping wail, sharp and tremulous, that splits the silence and stitches it back together with something new. Life. The women pause. No words. Just stillness. The fire crackles, the candle gutters, the babe cries again, and time resumes its slow turning. The midwife lifts the child with practiced care. Blood, wax, and newness cling to its tiny body. Its fists curl, pink and desperate. Its mouth opens and closes with the confusion of being born. The umbilical cord is cut, tied off with linen thread. A basin of warm water waits. Lavender steam rises. A girl. The midwife announces it softly. There is no ceremony, no trumpet of joy, just a name to place on a breath. A girl. She does not yet have a name. That will come later. But for now she is wrapped in soft cloth, wiped gently with damp wool, and placed into her mother's arms. And the world goes still again. The pain is not gone. It hums like a low drum beneath her ribs, but it recedes, step by step, as if retreating in reverence for what remains. Her limbs tremble. Her skin is damp, but her arms are steady. She looks at the face beneath the cloth, eyes shut, lips puckered, hair black and wet, clinging to a soft skull, so small, so impossibly whole. The girl shifts against her breast, her head seeking warmth, pressure, heartbeat. Not words, just the shape of safety. The bride-turned-mother does not cry. She thought she might, but instead she breathes, slowly, deeply, as if her lungs are returning to her for the first time in months. As if this moment, this first moment, has made space in her chest where there was only fear before. The women move around her with quiet purpose. The sheets are replaced, the soiled cloth gathered, the birthing stool removed, a clean blanket pulled over her shoulders. The midwife checks the afterbirth, speaks in low tones to her assistant. The maid builds the fire higher. The room grows warm again, but at the center of it all she does not move. She holds her daughter in both arms, rocking slightly, her eyes fixed on the slow rise and fall of the infant's tiny chest. She thinks of the chapel, of the note hidden in the old chest. I carry something that will outlive me, and now here it is. Not an idea, not a dream, but a person, a soul, a future. She whispers something to the baby. Not a name, not yet, just a sound, a promise shaped in silence, a thread woven in breath. And for the first time since she entered this castle as a bride, she feels not like someone surviving history, but someone making it. The morning after the birth is soft and slow. The castle seems quieter than usual, as if its old stones know to hush themselves out of reverence. Snowmelt trickles gently along the outer walls. A dove coos in the rafters above the window. The scent of rosemary and warm cloth still lingers, mingling with fresh rushes newly scattered across the floor. She does not rise. She does not dress. She lies with her daughter wrapped tightly to her chest, their breaths rising and falling in tender counterpoint. A servant brings broth and barley bread, but she only takes a few sips. Not from weakness, but from fullness. Her body is tired, but her spirit feels strangely whole, quietly stitched together in the hush that follows labor. No visitors come yet. The midwife sees to that. This day belongs to them, to the mother learning the shape of this new love, to the child learning how to exist without the rhythm of the womb, to the silence honored like a prayer. She studies every detail of the girl's face, her furrowed brow, her miniature fingernails, her nose like a thumbprint pressed into soft wax. She cannot believe that this person has come from within her, built bone by bone in secret, beneath ribs and breath. Her husband visits only briefly. He stands at the foot of the bed, quiet, and nods when told that it is a daughter. He offers a formal blessing, a name suggesting one from his mother's lineage. The lady nods but says nothing. He leaves shortly after, the echo of his boots vanishing down the hall. And when he is gone, she speaks for the first time that morning to her daughter, not loudly, not ceremonially, just a soft whisper, a name, not the one suggested by the Lord, not one passed down like property, but one her mother once whispered to her when she was still small, a name tied to no land, no bloodline, a name with edges soft by love and memory. She says it aloud, gently, tasting the syllables like honey on her tongue. The baby stirs slightly, not yet hearing, but feeling, the way newborns do. It is not a rebellion. It is a reclamation. Her name, their name, spoken without permission, claimed without approval. She holds the baby close and hums the tune again, the one she hummed through her last months of waiting, the same shapeless lullaby. And now, in the safety of her arms, the melody has a listener. Outside, spring begins to arrive in full. The trees thicken with green. The sky softens its blue. In the courtyard below, two young boys run with sticks, chasing imaginary dragons. A nursemaid laughs as she tries to catch them. The world continues, oblivious. But here, in this chamber, something eternal has begun. Not just a life, but a lineage of memory. A quiet rewriting of what it means to be a woman in this house, in this skin, in this time. Because while the world watches her for signs of duty fulfilled, she watches her daughter with eyes full of something else. Not obedience, not tradition. In the weeks that follow, she becomes someone new, Not instantly, not loudly, but piece by piece, like a tapestry repaired in slow, deliberate stitches. She wakes in the night to feed, to hum, to sway softly by candlelight. She walks slowly in. The courtyard now, with the baby swaddled tight against her chest. The guards bow as she passes. The kitchen girls whisper more sweetly than before. She is no longer only the bride, she is mother, and though that word, too, has been shaped by expectation and tradition, it feels different in her mouth, warmer, more complete. She notices things, more keenly now, like how the shadows fall differently across the nursery wall at sunset, or how the child flinches in her sleep when the bell in the west tower tolls. She learns the sound of every cry, the sharp one for hunger, the mewling one for comfort, the breathless one for dreams that drift too dark. Every evening she tells her daughter a story, not from books, not the tales of saints or kings, but her own memories dot of the wildflowers near her childhood stream, of the way her mother combed her hair, of the song she once sang into the wind and never heard again. Her daughter, too small to understand, watches with wide, watery eyes. But the lady believes stories don't need understanding to matter. They only need to be heard. She returns to the chapel one morning, a lone but not empty dot in her hand, a fresh note. The ink is soft and faded. Her writing smaller now, more precise. She kneels before the wooden chest, presses her palm against the worn lid, and places the folded parchment beside the others. I loved her before I knew her name. I loved her before she ever opened her eyes. Outside, the world shifts toward summer dot. The castle becomes louder, the halls busier. There are talks of travel, of alliances, of arranging betrothals for children not yet walking. But she keeps to her rhythm, walking with a child in the mornings, resting in the afternoons, reading in the quiet hours when the household sleeps. And sometimes, just before dusk, she thinks of that first night, the woolen bed, the candles, the aching stillness, and she realizes something it did not end her, it began her. Not because it was gentle, but because she endured it, because she made something from it, not bitterness, not silence, but life. And in doing so she has sown herself into the story, into the stone, into the firelight, into the very air that fills this old house, not as a footnote, but as a thread. By midsummer, the rhythms of her life feel less like survival, and more like breath. She moves through the corridors without hesitation now. The stone, once cold and unfamiliar beneath her steps, feels warm by her presence. She knows which windows let in the best light, which gardens bloom first, which hours the household grows quiet, enough to hear the birds nesting beneath the eaves. The baby begins to laugh, soft, hiccuping giggles at first, then full, bubbling joy that spills out of her like honey from an overfilled cup. The sound makes something in the lady's chest loosen. Every time she hears it, her spine straightens, her shoulders fall, and the ache behind her eyes lifts. She has given this child joy, and that feels like the greatest triumph. There is no monument built for her, no title bestowed, no songs written in her name, but she knows she has built something greater than legacy. She has built presence, a way of being, a softness where hardness was expected, a warmth where coldness was demanded, the strength to feel fully in a world that asked her to stay quiet. And still, she stays quiet, but the shape of her silence has changed. It is no longer filled with shame or obedience or fear. It is a silence made of choice, a silence rich with observation, steeped in memory. It is the pause between two verses of a lullaby, the breath before a name is whispered, the hush between heartbeat and hope. She writes less now, not because there is nothing to say, but because her life itself has become the message. She walks each day with her daughter pressed against her chest, singing softly, listening more, offering fewer words but deeper glances. The girl grows quickly. Her fingers reach. Her eyes follow. Her breath hums quietly as she sleeps, and sometimes in the deepest hours of the night, The lady watches her with such aching devotion that she forgets to blink. She traces her daughter's brow with one finger, wondering what kind of woman she will become, what kind of world she will inherit, and whether it will be kinder, not to children, but to girls, and then to women, and then to mothers who once had to survive their own wedding nights in silence. The seasons roll on, and the castle shifts again. Children grow. Maids marry. Stewards are replaced. Old lords pass away, their names added to lists read once a year in the chapel. The rhythm of the household remains steady, like the slow tolling of the evening bell, constant, predictable, full of echoes. But she is not the same. The girl who once walked trembling into a cold chamber under watchful eyes is gone. In her place stands a woman with quiet certainty. Her hands no longer shake. Her voice, when she chooses to use it, carries weight, not because it is loud, but because it has listened. There are other births, other weddings. She attends them as a respected presence now. The young brides glance at her nervously, but she meets their eyes with warmth. She knows what they do not yet know, that a woman can make a life within the silence they are given, and sometimes even beyond it. Her daughter learns to walk beneath the apple trees. She toddles between the nursemaid and her mother, reaching for petals, chasing butterflies, tripping on the hem of her little gown. The lady watches from a bench in the shade, one hand resting on her belly round again. Another child is coming. This time not with fear. This time with a deep, aching calm. She has not told the child yet, but she will, and when she does, she will not speak of duty or heirs. She will speak of warmth and beginnings, and the strength of bodies that hold both pain and beauty without breaking. She keeps the old psalm book still, tucked away on a high shelf behind the curtain in her chamber. Inside, the scraps remain: petals, notes, pressed leaves. She adds one more: my name was never just given. I grew it like a garden in silence until it bloomed. Sometimes she walks the gallery at dusk, where her footsteps echo beneath vaulted ceilings. Her shadow stretches long across stone mosaics. She passes portraits of women whose names are forgotten, and she wonders what they carried, what they lost, what they left behind for no one to see. And yet they are still here, their faces, their silence, their breath caught in dust. Like her, they endured, and now she lives not just for herself, but for all of them, for the girl she was, for the daughters she bears, for the women still to come who will read her silence like scripture and know they were never truly alone. The sun sets, the fire crackles. Her daughter leans against her side and yawns, small fingers curling into the folds of her skirt. She wraps one arm around the girl, smooths her hair, and hums a lullaby, the same tune, the one from her own girlhood, the one she hummed through pain, the one she whispered the first time she felt her baby move, and the one she now sings to the quiet waiting. Dark, a lullaby for the women who were never sung to, a lullaby for herself, a lullaby for tomorrow.